It was a cold night, the kind that makes you second-guess whether it's worth leaving the warmth of your home. The fog rolled in from the lowlands, wrapping the quiet streets in a layer of mystery. I had been sitting in the living room, flipping through channels, unable to focus on anything. My mind was scattered, restless. For the past few weeks, things between Emily and me hadn't been the same. Her smiles were less frequent, her laughter more distant, and even though we tried to make small talk, there was an undeniable gap between us. I didn't want to acknowledge it at first. Relationships go through rough patches, right? But deep down, I feared something was changing. It wasn't until I heard the faint hum of the engine coming from the driveway that I thought of it, her car, a sleek silver sedan. Emily had just gotten back from her late shift at the cafe. She'd promised she'd be home by midnight. I stood up and walked over to the window, parting the blinds just enough to catch a glimpse of her car. She had parked in the driveway and sat there for a moment, the engine still running. Something about it felt off. I strained my eyes, trying to figure out why. Then, through the fog and dim streetlights, I saw him. A man. Felt wrong. I watched Emily's car for a moment longer. She hesitated, the engine still idling, and then, without warning, she rolled down the window. The man spoke to her briefly. She nodded, a slight smile playing on her lips, and then he opened the passenger door. I didn't know who this man was, but in that moment, something gnawed at me. That feeling, that gut instinct. She was letting a stranger into her car, alone, in the middle of nowhere. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was just a lost traveler. Maybe she was just being kind. Emily had always been kind, sometimes to a fault. But as the minutes passed and the silence in the living room grew louder, that sinking feeling turned into something darker. I couldn't shake the idea that something was wrong. A sudden impulse took over, and I grabbed my jacket, pulling it over my shoulders. I needed to know. Something inside me told me I wasn't just overreacting. This was more than just a random act of kindness. And so, I did the one thing I knew I shouldn't have done, I left the house. I stepped out into the cold night air, the gravel crunching underfoot as I made my way to the car. Every step felt heavy, like I was walking toward an inevitable confrontation. I drove slowly, keeping a safe distance from Emily's car, watching as she made her way down the winding road. The stranger was still there, beside her. The car dipped slightly as he shifted in his seat, the faint glow from the dashboard illuminating their faces for a split second. It didn't take long before they turned onto a desolate stretch of highway, one I knew all too well. This was the road that led to the old cabin, the one that was barely used anymore. The perfect place to disappear. I could feel the knot in my stomach tightening as my mind raced with possibilities. This was no coincidence. I wasn't sure what I hoped to find, but I followed them anyway, the silence in my car deafening. All I could hear was the steady hum of the engine and the erratic pounding of my heartbeat. I tried to steady my hands on the steering wheel, but my palms were sweating. What was I going to do when I caught up to them? Confront her? Confront him? A million thoughts swirled in my head. Eventually, the two cars pulled into a secluded area. The headlights cut through the fog, casting long shadows across the road. I parked a little farther back, hidden behind a cluster of trees, and watched as Emily's car came to a stop. The man got out, stretching his long legs, and then they both disappeared into the dark, walking toward the cabin. I felt like an intruder. A voyeur. But my heart wouldn't let me turn away. I waited. Time seemed to stretch, dragging on longer than it should have. I couldn't see what was happening, but I knew. A terrible certainty washed over me, like a tidal wave, and I could almost hear the thudding of my pulse in my ears. Emily, my Emily, was betraying me. The minutes dragged like hours. I sat there, barely breathing, staring at the empty spot where they'd vanished. My hands trembled against the steering wheel, the cold outside nothing compared to the frost building inside me. I thought about turning on the car, about driving away before I saw something I couldn't unsee, but I couldn't move. My feet were rooted. My mind was caught in a whirlpool of denial and dread. I needed to be sure, even though, in my bones, I already knew. Eventually, I got out of the car. The wind bit through my jacket as I crept through the trees, every step slow and careful. The fog had thickened, wrapping around the branches like old memories. I knew this place. I'd been here with Emily once, years ago, when things were simpler, when we still laughed without effort and held hands just to feel connected. Now I was stalking through the same woods, looking for evidence of the very thing I never imagined she was capable of. There was a faint glow ahead. A lantern, maybe. Or candles. The cabin's windows flickered with soft yellow light. I crouched behind a rotted tree stump and watched, my breath shallow and quick. The curtain wasn't fully drawn. And there she was. My heart stuttered. Emily. She stood near the window, her back to me, laughing. Really laughing. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard in months. The sound was muffled by the glass, but it was unmistakable. Her shoulders were relaxed, her body angled towards someone just out of view. Then he stepped into frame. The cowboy. Still wearing his denim jacket, though his boots were off, sat beside the fireplace. He moved like he belonged there. Like he'd been there before. And when he reached out and touched her face, softly, like it was a habit, it felt like a punch to the gut. I turned away. I couldn't watch more. I stumbled back through the trees, branches scraping my arms, my face, but I barely felt them. My mind was a storm. I had no words for what I'd seen, only raw emotion, tangled and ugly. By the time I made it back to my car, my legs felt like rubber. I sat behind the wheel, gripping it like a lifeline. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring into the fog, trying to make sense of a moment that shattered everything. Emily didn't come home that night. And when she finally did, hours later, just as the sun was bleeding across the horizon, she smelled like campfire smoke and motel soap. Her hair was messy. Her eyes, tired. But she smiled like nothing had happened. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Not yet. I needed to know more. The following days passed like a slow funeral. Not a loud one with weeping and wails, but the quiet kind where everyone pretends they're fine while something inside them is rotting. I went through the motions, work, meals, polite nods, but inside, I was hollowed out. Emily moved through the house like nothing had changed. She kissed my cheek in the mornings, cooked dinner like she used to, even curled up beside me on the couch. But I couldn't unsee that cabin. I couldn't forget the way she laughed with him, like she used to laugh with me. The worst part? She didn't know I knew. She looked me in the eyes with that same warmth, and every time, I had to fight the urge to ask her how she could lie so easily. How she could share a bed with me after sharing something else with a stranger in the woods. A stranger in cowboy boots. I'd replayed it over and over in my head. That moment by the window. His hand on her face. Her smile. I'd even gone back to the cabin the next night, hoping to find some trace of them, maybe a forgotten jacket, a bottle, anything. But the place was empty. Clean. Like they were never there. But they were. I'd seen it. And so, I started looking. I waited until Emily was asleep one night, then I slipped out of bed and into her car. Her silver sedan still smelled faintly like her perfume, but something else lingered underneath, wood smoke and pine and the faintest trace of sweat. I turned on the dome light and started digging through the glove box. Nothing. Then under the seats. More nothing. But when I popped the trunk, that's when I found it. A matchbook. From a place I didn't recognize. Dusty Trail Motel, Route 7, off exit 19. I stared at it for a long time, running my thumb over the rough paper. This wasn't some random hitchhiker, not some poor soul she helped out of kindness. He was real. He had a place, or at least a history. And Emily had been there. My hands were shaking as I closed the trunk. I didn't sleep that night. 2 days later, I told Emily I had an early meeting out of town. She kissed me goodbye and told me to drive safe. I nodded. I even smiled. Then I headed straight for exit 19. The dusty trail motel sat back from the road, hidden behind a row of dying pines. Its neon sign buzzed faintly, half the letters burned out. There were only 3 cars in the lot, an old Ford pickup, a rusted-out hatchback, and a motorcycle with a cracked leather seat. I walked into the office, the bell above the door jingling faintly. A woman in her 60s sat behind the desk, flipping through a crossword. "Need a room?" she asked without looking up. "Maybe." "Just passing through," I said, my voice casual. "Place looks like it's been around a while." "Longer than it should've," she chuckled. Then looked up. "You sure you're not looking for someone?" Her eyes narrowed just a little. I hesitated. "There a guy who stays here sometimes?" "Cowboy boots. Denim jacket. Real quiet type." She smirked. "You're not the first one to ask about him." "He's bad news," she went on, standing slowly. "Shows up every few months. Always with a new woman. Always vanishes before dawn." "You know his name?" She shook her head. "Never gives one." "But the women? They all come back different." "You sure you want to find him?" I didn't answer right away. I wasn't even sure what I'd do if I did. On the drive back, the silence in my car was so loud it hurt. I couldn't get her words out of my head. They all come back different. Emily had come back different. Not in the way you notice right away, but in the tiny things. The sudden bursts of laughter that didn't belong. The way she stared out windows longer than she used to. The distant look that sometimes flickered in her eyes, like she wasn't really with me anymore. She was changed. And maybe I'd never get back the version of her that left that night. But I had to try. Or I had to know why. Because something about this guy didn't feel entirely real. He wasn't just some drifter. Not the way people described him. The way he moved. The way Emily looked at him. The motel clerk's voice when she said he vanished before dawn. And that strange feeling I'd had the moment I saw him by her car, that creeping chill down my spine like I was seeing something I wasn't supposed to. Maybe I wasn't chasing a man at all. Maybe I was chasing a ghost. The motel clerk's words echoed in my mind long after I left that rundown office. "You sure you want to find him?" I wasn't sure of anything anymore. Except that the man in the denim jacket had taken something from me. And not just in the physical sense. It was like he'd stolen a part of Emily's soul, and maybe a part of mine too. When I got home, Emily was in the kitchen, humming. She had eggs going on the stove and a fresh cup of coffee waiting for me on the table, just like nothing had changed. But everything had. I sat down and watched her move around the room. She wore one of my old t-shirts, barefoot, her hair pulled back in that messy way I used to find adorable. For a second, I felt the weight of years, good years, press on me like a stone. But it was all tangled now. I didn't know where the real Emily ended and this new version began. "You okay?" she asked, noticing my silence. "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired." She nodded, smiled gently. "I missed you last night." I stared into my coffee. "So where'd you go?" she asked, casual. "Just some motel off exit 19, I said, keeping my voice even. "Dusty trail. You ever heard of it?" She froze. Not visibly. Not in a way most people would notice. But I knew her. I saw the way her eyes paused a second too long on the frying pan. The way her grip on the spatula tightened just enough. "No," she said finally. "Never been." Another lie. The smell of smoke and pine still clung to her coat in the hallway. I'd sniffed it while she was in the shower the night before. It was faint, but it was there. The same scent that lingered around that motel. I wanted to scream at her. Confront her. Shatter this charade. But I didn't. Instead, I said, seemed like the kind of place people go when they don't want to be found. She glanced over her shoulder, her smile still in place. Sounds creepy. It was. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not with her lying next to me like nothing had happened. Her breathing was soft, steady. She even reached for me in her sleep, her hand resting lightly on my chest. I stared at the ceiling and tried to feel something. Anger. Love. Betrayal. But it was all mashed together into a numb kind of ache. I needed to talk to someone. Anyone. So the next morning, I drove out to see Marcus. He was one of my oldest friends, grew up a few streets over, worked on cars now, owned a garage on the edge of town. He and I used to double date back in the day. He knew Emily. Knew us. When I walked into the garage, the air smelled like grease and gasoline. He wiped his hands on a rag and raised an eyebrow. "Damn, you look like hell." "I need to ask you something," I said. He motioned toward the office. We sat down inside, the small room cluttered with old magazines and dusty car parts. "You remember that guy I told you about?" I asked. "The one Emily picked up? The cowboy?" "Yeah. I went looking for him. Found a motel clerk who's seen him before. Said he shows up with different women. Disappears by morning." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Man, that's sketchy as hell." I nodded. "I think he's done something to her." Marcus gave me a look. "You mean like, blackmail? Threats?" "No. I mean," I stopped. "It's like he got inside her head. Like she's still here but not all the way. You know?" Marcus was quiet for a while. Then he said, "You remember my cousin, Tara?" I did. "Sweet girl. Married young. Lost her husband in a fire. Never really bounced back. She disappeared for 3 days last year," Marcus said. "Showed back up out of nowhere. Wouldn't say where she'd been. Said she picked up a man on the highway. Cowboy boots, denim jacket. Said he needed a ride. Next thing she remembers, it's 3 days later and she's back in her driveway like nothing happened." My blood went cold. "You ever tell anyone that?" He shook his head. "Didn't think anyone would believe it. Figured it was trauma. But now you're saying Emily. She was with him." We stared at each other for a long time. Neither of us said it out loud, but it was there in the silence. This guy wasn't just some drifter. He was something else. That night, I tried again. Emily was in bed, reading a book I'd never seen her touch before. Some old Western novel. I watched her for a while, then said, "Do you believe people can be changed by someone else? Like, just one night with them and they're never the same?" She didn't look up. After a moment, she said softly, "Yeah. I think that happens more than we realize." I swallowed hard. "Did he hurt you?" She finally looked at me. Her eyes were tired. Heavy with something deeper than guilt. "No," she whispered. "But I think. I let him take something I didn't know I still had." "What does that mean?" She shook her head. "I don't know. It's like, he saw something in me. Not the person I am now. Not the wife. Just me. The me I forgot about." I sat there, stunned. What did he say to you? She stared at the wall. He asked if I was tired of pretending. And are you? She blinked, tears welling up. I don't know anymore. I couldn't take it. I left the room and slept on the couch. But even as I lay there, trying to wrap my head around what was happening, one thing became clear. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That man, whatever he was still out there. Hitchhiking roads at night, looking for someone else to pick him up. And I wasn't going to sit back and let it happen again. I was going to find him. And I was going to make him answer for what he did. Even if I had to walk through hell to do it. It was nearly 3 a.m. when I sat up on the couch, drenched in sweat, heart pounding like I'd been running for miles. I'd had another dream, no, not a dream. A memory, but warped. Distorted like a broken mirror. In it, I was back at the cabin. Only this time, I was the one stepping out of the car. Emily was already waiting by the porch, smiling at me. But when I got closer, it wasn't Emily. It was him. Same denim jacket. Same pale stare. And that crooked little smile that somehow felt older than time. Then I woke up. I didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, Emily was already gone. No note. No text. Just her keys missing from the hook and the faint smell of her shampoo lingering in the hallway like a ghost. I checked her phone location. Disabled. Something she never did. That's when I knew, she was going back to him. The thought nearly knocked the wind out of me. Not just the betrayal, not again, but the pull he had over her. It wasn't just attraction. It was something deeper. Something I didn't understand. And I wasn't going to wait around this time. I grabbed my jacket, keys, and the motel matchbook still sitting on the entry table like a forgotten clue. I wasn't sure where I was going, but my gut told me to start where it all began. I headed back to the highway. Same stretch. Same fog. Same quiet hum of the tires under me, the road unspooling like thread through a needle. And then, like clockwork, I saw him. There he was. Just standing on the side of the road like he'd been waiting for me all along. Cowboy boots. Denim jacket. Hands in his pockets like this was just another night. Like this was his routine. But this time, I didn't pass him by. This time, I stopped. I rolled down my window slowly. He leaned in. "Evenin'," he said, voice smooth, polite, like a man raised by old-time manners. "You headed west?" I stared at him for a long second, heart thundering behind my ribs. "You been in my wife's car?" He didn't flinch. Just smiled. "Lotta people give rides," he said. "Sometimes they're lookin' for more than just conversation." "What did you do to her?" His smile faded. "She found what she needed. That's all." I tightened my grip on the wheel. "You don't even know her." "She knew me," he said softly. "That's what matters." Before I could say anything else, he opened the door and slid into the passenger seat like it was his car, like I'd invited him. "Let's drive," he said. "You've got questions. I've got time." We didn't talk for the first 10 minutes. I kept glancing at him from the corner of my eye, watching the way he sat so still, like he belonged in silence. He didn't fidget. Didn't check his phone. Just stared ahead like he already knew where we were going. "You do this often?" I asked finally. He nodded. "When the road calls." "What are you?" He looked over at me, calm as water. "Just a man who doesn't belong in one place. Some people call me a drifter. Others, a mirror. I show people what they've forgotten about themselves." "You think that's noble?" "I don't care what it is. It's what I am." I could feel the anger boiling in my chest. "You wreck lives." "No," he said. I reveal them. We drove in silence a while longer, the trees blurring past outside. Eventually, we pulled off onto a dirt road. One I didn't recognize, but somehow felt familiar. The cabin. But it wasn't the same as before. This one was older. More run down. Weather-beaten and gray, with vines crawling up its sides like veins on dying skin. The fog hung heavier here, like it knew this was a place meant to be forgotten. "Come on," the man said, stepping out. I followed. Inside, it was dark and musty. Dust floated in the slats of moonlight that crept through the broken windows. The floor creaked under our steps. And then I saw them. Photos. Hundreds of them. Taped to the walls. Tucked into mirrors. Scattered across a long wooden table. Every photo was the same. Different women. Same man. Always standing beside them. Sometimes in the passenger seat. Sometimes near the cabin. Sometimes holding their hand. My knees nearly gave out. Emily's photo was there too. She was smiling. Laughing. Leaning against the hood of our car. And beside her, the man stood like a shadow burned into her memory. "You take these?" He nodded. "Why? To keep them?" "No," he said. "To remember who they were. Before they forgot again." I turned to him, breath shaking. "You think you're doing something good?" "I don't care what it looks like," he said. "Some people live their whole lives wearing a mask. Pretending. You don't think your wife's been doing that?" "She loved me." "She still does," he said, voice almost kind. "But you don't get to own every piece of her. Sometimes there's a part that breaks off. And someone else finds it." I couldn't take it. I lunged at him. But before I could touch him, the air shifted, thickened. My vision blurred, my legs locked up like I was being held in place by something I couldn't see. My breath came in short gasps. The photos on the wall began to ripple, like they were underwater. "You're not human," I choked out. He smiled, sad and knowing. "Neither are you. Not when you're like this." Then everything went dark. When I came to, I was alone. Back in my car. Parked outside our house. My phone buzzed with a message from Emily. "Where are you? I woke up and you were gone." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I looked in the rearview mirror, and for just a second, I saw his reflection, sitting in the back seat. But when I turned around, it was gone. Just empty air. And the faint scent of wood smoke. The next few days passed like dreams half remembered. Emily was there, but distant. She moved through the house like a ghost. We talked, sometimes. Smiled when we had to. But underneath it all, there was a pulsing silence that neither of us dared to touch. She didn't ask about where I'd gone that night. I didn't ask why she left again. And yet, something had changed. Not just in her, but in me. There were gaps now, moments I couldn't account for. A cup of coffee I didn't remember making. Muddy boots by the door, and I hadn't left the house all day. I started catching my reflection in strange places, windows, car mirrors, even in a dark TV screen, and every time, it looked like I was slightly out of sync. Like the man looking back at me wasn't quite me. At night, the dreams got worse. Same highway. Same fog. Same cabin. But now, I was with him. Sometimes in the passenger seat. Sometimes on the porch. Sometimes just standing in the road, thumb out, waiting. One morning, I found a Polaroid on the kitchen counter. It wasn't there the night before. It showed me, driving Emily's car, smiling. But Emily wasn't in the frame. The passenger seat was empty. Except for one thing. A denim jacket folded neatly across the seat. I stared at it for a long time. Then I flipped it over. There was a name written in ink across the back. Kane. The next time I saw the man, it was in the reflection of the microwave. I was heating up coffee. Half asleep. Eyes barely open. And there he was. Leaning against the wall behind me, arms crossed. I turned quickly, nothing. But my hands were shaking. I needed answers. Not from Emily. Not anymore. I needed to know what this thing, this Kane, was. And what he had done to her. To me. So I drove. I didn't even think, I just went. Past the edge of town. Past the gas stations and quiet barns and forgotten fields. I drove until the sky dimmed, until the trees grew thick and gnarled, hanging low like they were trying to warn me. And finally, I found the road again. The road. The one from that night. I turned onto it, tires crunching gravel and old leaves. My headlights flickered. And there it was. The cabin. Looking older than ever. Like it had been there longer than time. I stepped out. The air smelled like rust and burnt wood. And this time, I didn't hesitate. Inside, nothing had changed. Same dust. Same table. Same photos on the walls, though now, there were more. And this time, they were all of me. Me sitting in cars. Me walking alone in the fog. Me standing by Emily's side. Me looking straight into the lens, like I knew the photo was being taken. I backed away slowly, heart pounding in my throat. That's when I saw him. Kane. Sitting calmly in the corner, legs crossed. Like he'd been waiting. I told you, he said softly. This is just who you are now. I shook my head. You did something to me. To her. He stood. I didn't make anything happen. You were already heading this way. All I did was, open the door. He stepped closer, his boots making no sound on the creaking wood. You think she was the first? You think you're the first man to chase after something broken? To lose yourself trying to fix someone else's damage? I clenched my fists. She was mine. No one belongs to anyone. Not really. He paused. Looked me dead in the eyes. Ask yourself, honestly, when you saw her that night, when she picked me up, did you feel fear? Or envy? That stopped me. Because there was a moment, just one, where I had felt it. That flicker of something deep, dark, and hollow. Like I'd wanted to be him. Free. Mysterious. Desired. I'm not like you, I whispered. He smiled. You weren't. Then he pulled something from his jacket pocket. Another photo. He handed it to me. It was Emily. Alone. Standing by our driveway, hair tangled, eyes red from crying. She looked lost. The back red. She kept waiting for him to come home. But he never did. Just a man who looked like him, wearing his face like a mask. That night, I went home. Emily was asleep on the couch, curled up in a blanket. The TV played something low and forgettable. I sat beside her. She stirred, looked at me. But her eyes, they didn't widen. They didn't soften. They searched. Like she wasn't sure if it was really me. And the truth is, I wasn't either. For the next few days, I tried to live as if things were normal. I woke up. I made coffee. I folded the laundry. I kissed Emily on the cheek, and she kissed me back, her eyes searching mine, always searching, like she was waiting for something to return that still hadn't. I was right there beside her, but I wasn't home. Not really. Because a part of me was still out there. On that road. In the fog. Where the air feels thick with choices and regrets. Where that denim-clad ghost waits, hitchhiking through people's lives like a phantom of the things they don't want to admit. I didn't know who I was anymore. And I think Emily knew it too. She tried to talk one night. We were sitting on the back porch, a couple drinks between us, the cold air nipping at our skin. "You feel different," she said, voice barely a whisper. I didn't answer right away. Then I said the truth. I saw him again. She looked down. Her hand gripped the glass tighter. "I figured you might," she said. "You went after us." I nodded. "I saw the cabin. I saw the pictures." She didn't flinch. "And now you're one of them." Her voice broke slightly. She was trying to keep herself together. I reached for her hand, but she didn't take it. "I never stopped loving you," she said. "Even when I didn't understand what was happening to me. Even when I gave in. I wanted to say something. Anything. But the words wouldn't come. Because some part of me understood. She hadn't cheated for pleasure. She'd been pulled, like I had. Like so many others before us. That road, it didn't lead anywhere. It took people. That night, I went into the garage and stared at my car. The keys were already in the ignition. The door already unlocked. Like it was waiting. I sat inside. The cabin light flicked on. And there, on the passenger seat, was the denim jacket. Folded neatly. My breath hitched. I hadn't brought it back. And yet, here it was, again. I drove. Out past the edge of town. Past the places where cell service disappears and the trees close in like secrets. The sky was cloudy, the moon fighting to show itself. The road was empty, except for the fog rolling low across the pavement. I knew what I was doing. I wasn't running. I wasn't chasing. I was answering. The road curved ahead, and I saw him. Thumb out. Boots planted in the gravel. Hat low over his brow. I pulled over. He didn't smile this time. He just looked at me, tired. Like he'd been doing this for far too long. I rolled down the window. He leaned in. "You sure?" I nodded. He opened the door and slid into the passenger seat. Neither of us said a word. I drove. We passed fields and forests and miles of nothing, the fog swallowing everything behind us. The headlights were the only truth in a world gone pale and silent. Then, finally, I spoke. "I want it to end." He looked at me. For once, his eyes were soft. "It never ends. Not for people like us." "Why?" I asked. "Because we're the ones who never let go." I pulled into the clearing where the cabin once stood. But it was gone. Just open space now. A few charred timbers, a rusted nail here and there. Like it had burned away a long time ago and no one had noticed. I stepped out. He did too. We stood there for a while, side by side, not saying anything. Then he handed me something. A photo. Of Emily. Not smiling. Not crying. Just waiting. Standing in the doorway of our home, arms crossed like she was holding herself together. He said, "You still have time." I turned to him. "You're not coming?" He shook his head. "I never do." And just like that, he was gone. No footsteps. No sound. Just the fog curling around where he'd stood, as if he'd never been there at all. I drove back home, the jacket still folded on the seat beside me. The sky was just starting to lighten with the faintest color of dawn. When I pulled into the driveway, Emily was standing on the porch in her robe, arms tucked around herself, shivering slightly. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "You came back," she whispered. I nodded. I stepped out and walked to her. She stared at me for a long time, her gaze falling on the denim jacket in my hands. "You brought it back with you," she said quietly. I looked down at it. "No," I said. "I'm leaving it here." And I tossed it into the fire pit. We watched it burn. No sparks. No smoke. Just quiet flames licking away the last trace of him. And maybe, of who I'd started to become. That night, we didn't talk much. We didn't need to. We lay in bed, back to back, a breath apart. And somehow, that space between us felt less than it had before. Like we'd finally seen the shadow that had followed us. And maybe, just maybe, we'd outrun it. For now.